Attorneys for Officer Vappie are expressing their disappointment with the leak, which City Hall labeled inadvertent.
Now, they put out a long statement today for the first time since the administrative interrogation was made public. Rob Masson has more.
I've never seen that happen before.
It was a tape of an interrogation by the Public Integrity Bureau of former mayoral security officer Jeffrey Vappie, which the city said was inadvertently released by the law department to a Hano board member.
Did you ever do that with Mayor Negan?
No, I didn't do it.
Did you ever go inside of any apartment or any place that Mayor Negan was at and change clothes?
No.
Vappie's attorneys have now released a lengthy statement saying, "We're incredibly disappointed by this leak. Officer Vappie cooperated fully with this investigation and submitted to a tedious PIB interview. There was an obligation to impartially and confidentially conduct the investigation, and the president of the Police Association of New Orleans agrees."
That undermines the entire process because people who talk to those investigators expect that what they're saying is between them and the investigators, and clearly it's not.
Vappie's attorney statement goes on to say, "We limited comments to the press during the investigation to protect its integrity, but those entrusted with safeguarding the investigation files did not."
We have all sorts of issues now. Does that leak, if you will, have any effect on the investigation? Only time will tell.
For her part, the president of the Hano Board of Commissioners says at no time was any sitting board member in possession of the Vappie interrogations. And now Sharon Jasper, who Mayor Cantrell is trying to remove from the board and was off the board briefly this year, put out a statement saying she too has no knowledge of any PIB tape being released.
This is one more example of, in my opinion, that PIB needs to be overhauled in the way they do business.
The Police Association of New Orleans has long complained that the Public Integrity Bureau is the main reason why the police resignation rate is so high.
The attrition is what's causing the biggest problem with NOPD, and NOPD is the entity that interdicts crime in the city and keeps us safe. So if you want to know why we have a crime problem, the number one cause is the lack of staffing at NOPD, and the lack of staffing is caused by attrition, and the attrition is caused by PIB, and we do nothing to change it.
Pano President Michael Glasser is among those who says the Public Integrity Bureau should have never handled an investigation involving the mayor, and he says it should have been conducted by a third party. Rob Masson, Fox 8 Local First.